Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of The Studio. My name is Adam. This is another episode of Cheap versus Expensive Marimbas. Once again, thank you to my studio VIPs, Carl Spence, Luke Uyamura, thank you so much. And today's featured studio artist is Kalevi Rinti. Thank you so much, Kalevi. If you want to be a studio artist or studio VIP and support the show, you can go to patreon.com/AdamTan, or you can click up here. You guys went crazy over the last cheap versus expensive video, so I thought I might make another one. We have two marimbas up on today's episode. We have the Yamaha YM-1430, which is a 4 1/3 octave Paduk marimba. And of course, for the expensive marimba, we have the Marimba 1 Izzy, the Beast, 5 octave rosewood marimba, traditional keyboard, classic resonators. It's mine. So yeah, this is going to be a pretty interesting battle. Now, quick disclaimer, I know that even though I'm putting these two marimbas side by side, it's not a very level playing field. This is obviously a 5 octave, it's a concert marimba, but I think this video is not so much about whether or not my Marimba 1 Izzy is worth 5 times the amount of the Yamaha. I think it's more about the fact that if you're buying your first marimba, it might be wise to look into something smaller, like this 4 1/3, as opposed to going big for the first time and buying a 5 octave. So I thought that'd be an interesting discussion point for this video, which is why I'm going to compare and contrast every single point of these two marimbas just for you guys. So let's start with the price. So the Yamaha YM-1430 is a mass-produced instrument. It's made in Japan. It's made of Paduk, of course, so it's definitely on the cheaper side, quite a small instrument in terms of general size. So the total cost of this marimba is around $3,000 US. I think that's quite affordable for a first instrument. Now the Marimba 1 Izzy, which is my 5 octave marimba, which has appeared in every single video that I've made on this show, it is currently priced at about $15,000 US, but it is a 5 octave instrument. It is handmade in Arcata, California, so of course it's going to be $15,000. Think about your budget and think about which one is more suitable to your needs. Next, let's talk about the most noticeable thing about these two marimbas, which is the bars. So the bars on the YM-1430 are Paduk. It's definitely easier to find. You can see on the Yamaha bars, most of the grains look pretty similar. It has that very mass-produced look, which is totally fine. And Paduk, in terms of sound, generally is more bright and less warm, so it doesn't resonate as much, but it's very bright, which makes it a very good practice instrument because you can hear the notes quite clearly. Now you can see on the YM-1430 the bars are actually graduated. They graduated very slightly. It's definitely not as graduated as a 5 octave marimba, but you can see the bottom bar is a little bit wider than the top bar. Pretty robust bars. This particular Yamaha that I have in the studio right now has been owned by Jackson for quite a long time. I'm pretty sure he's owned it for at least 5 years, and the bars still sound relatively in tune, so not bad, Yamaha. Overall, I think for the price, the Yamaha's bars are pretty decent and they actually sound quite good. Now the Marimba 1 Izzy's bars, obviously these bars are much nicer in terms of quality. They look a lot cooler. They have a lot of grains. You can see on my particular marimba, all the grains are all slightly different. And of course it's made of Honduran rosewood. Now rosewood is more resonant than Paduk. It rings out a lot more, but it's not as bright. So it's more of a warm sound. It's more of a concert sound. I think that's really nice for a performance marimba. And I remember in episode 1 when I first received the bars, they still had the shavings underneath. That was literally because after I called them to make the order, they made the marimba the next day. It was pretty cool. So we have very nice handcrafted bars for the $15,000 price tag. I think it's pretty justified. Now what about resonators? Now the resonators of the YM-1430 can best be described as functional. There are no decorative resonators in between all the gaps in the black notes. You can definitely see the resonators only appear when there's actual notes above them, which is fine. It's painted in this nice gold tan color, which is very typical Japanese style, very conservative. I think it looks great. Now on either end of the marimba, the resonators sit on these really narrow rails, and they have 2 sets of slits, one for each climate, which I think is a really strange thing. I've never understood the climate thing on 4 1/3 marimbas, but if anyone can explain it to me, that would be awesome, because I'm still trying to figure out why moving the slits back and forth makes any difference. But anyway, now because these resonators are so light, they definitely wobble a lot more. You can see, look at that. They wobble a lot because they're very light, and again, they're just sitting in those slots, so they're not really held down by anything, which again is fine. When you're actually playing it, they don't wobble, so sounds good enough to me for $3,000. Now the Marimba 1 Izzy's resonators are on a whole nother level. I mean, first we got that beautiful curved design, but unlike the Yamaha, they fill all of the gaps to make that nice curve. That's really cool. The actual resonators themselves are much heavier, disregarding the 5-octave end at the bottom. Even without that, it's still really heavy. The metal's a little bit thicker, and at the ends of the resonators, they have solid blocks which sit flush inside the slots. So you don't get little slots with 2 pieces of metal. No, you get the entire block, which is covered in felt, and it just goes boom inside the slot, nice and flush. So when you shake the Marimba 1 Izzy, I'm gonna call this the studio shake and bake test. The resonators just stay rigid. I know how many people are crying on the inside as I shake this, but you can see, this thing does not shake. The resonators are solid and they do not move, and because of the felt, there is no vibration sound, there's no squeaking, nothing like that. It is immaculate. So in conclusion, even though my Marimba 1 Izzy has amazing resonators that look really beautiful, the Yamaha has very functional resonators which work really well, and even though it wobbles a little bit, it's super light, which means it's really easy to take them out and you can pack it up really easily as well. Now, what about the bases? So when I say bases, I'm referring to the ends of each marimba, you know, the bit with the wheels. The bases are a solid piece of black painted wood, and they're pretty robust. Like, we've unpacked and packed this marimba many times, and they're still standing up perfectly fine. No major accidents, no major scratches. The wheels are a bit small, so I think for like vigorous gigging, it might wear out a bit, but as a practice instrument, it's totally fine. For a $3,000 instrument, it's totally fine. And unlike a lot of practice marimbas, the Yamaha has height adjustment. It is manually height adjustable. All you have to do is turn this knob and the thing can go up and down. So obviously it's a little bit more rudimentary than like a gas lift system, but it works. And it has height adjustment. Like, how many practice marimbas around the $3,000 mark have height adjustment? And then when we go over to the Marimba 1 Izzy, okay, it's got very nice features. It's got a gas lift. The base is a solid piece of wood. I think it's mahogany or something, but it has this really nice texture to it. It's just a beautiful piece of wood, and it's one piece. It's been rounded out very nicely. Underneath the piece of wood, you've got the Marimba 1 gas lift. It's one of the most famous gas lifts in the industry because it keeps the marimba up pneumatically. So like when you undo the gas lift, the marimba doesn't go, doesn't just collapse down. It actually stays up on its own accord because the gas lift has so much pressure in there. So again, yes, obviously the Marimba 1 base is a lot better, but for $3,000, the Yamaha doesn't do bad either. I know I'm gonna keep saying this over and over again, but I just want to stress the point that starting off your marimba career with a Yamaha 4 1/3 octave is not a bad thing. Now moving on to the miscellaneous aspects of each marimba, so things like the hardware and the struts. Obviously the Yamaha's hardware and struts are very simple. It's just one crossbar along the bottom, and then it's got 2 struts that go up like this, and it's got 2 hooks that go across the resonators like this. That's not like super advanced or anything, but it works. It's a very simple strut system. It's pretty stable. The only thing is the resonators wobble a little bit, but the actual frame is rock solid. In terms of all the knobs and the hardware, they could be a little bit easier to turn, but again, we're dealing with a $3,000 instrument, so nothing bad here. It moves along with reasonable ease. It is getting a little bit stiff now because this is quite old. And obviously the Marimba 1 Izzy, well, you already know what I'm gonna say. It's a beast to move. It's very heavy, but the wheels are huge. They're like industrial sized wheels. They can get over any sort of pavement or terrain relatively easily. Obviously I wouldn't put it on a dirt road or anything. The hardware on the Marimba 1 Izzy is made in-house, and like even if you unscrew the strut by accident, it still stays in there because it's got like a locking mechanism inside. Just little details like that. Really well made. And finally we get to my last non-musical point about these two marimbas, which is practicality. This 5-octave marimba here is almost 2 meters long. It is so big, and like you can't carry this anywhere without using like a truck or packing it down. And packing this thing down by yourself is really tricky because it's very heavy. But the YM-1430, the Yamaha 4 1/3 octave, is so easy to set up and pack down. In fact, here is a time lapse of me setting up the Yamaha. Okay, let's do it. Yay! I did that in 6 minutes, and this was my first time building this marimba. I just looked at the letters to see which one went in where, but it was so easy. And the best part is this marimba actually fits in my car. I drive a Hyundai hatchback. Let's disassemble this thing. Done. fits in so easily with plenty of room to spare. But this marimba, which I transport in 7 cases, does not fit in my hatchback because it's a bit too fat. So, it is nice to know that you can pack it up once in a while if you need to. So before I do the conclusion of this video, I want to give you guys a sound test of each instrument. I played exactly the same thing on both instruments with the same mallets. I used Van Sices on both instruments, so you can hear exactly what you think. I did not use the bottom octave of the Marimba one Izzy because that would have been unfair, so I kept everything to the same range of the Yamaha. This is the sound test. Now, I didn't make this video to be like, oh yes, my Marimba one Izzy is just amazing and the Yamaha sucks, get that out of here. And obviously it would have been a lot fairer if I had like the YM-1430 5-octave marimba against the Izzy, because then they'd both be 5-octave concert marimbas. I think what I was trying to say with this video is because there's a trend now of a lot of people wanting to buy 5-octave marimbas as their first marimba. And I just want to say, don't look down on little marimbas. Don't look down on practice marimbas. Don't look down on 4 1/3 octave marimbas that look like this. Don't look down on Padauk marimbas. Don't look down on even synthetic marimbas, because you should always buy something that is within your means. Don't try and buy stuff that is like ridiculously expensive just because everyone else has one. You should always buy the marimba that is best for your needs. So if you're going to be gigging a lot, or if you're going to be practicing at home a lot and you don't have much space, buy the 4 1/3. Don't buy a 5-octave concert marimba because it's not going to fit in your house. You're not going to be able to take it out of your house very often. So buy the 4 1/3, it's a lot cheaper and you'd probably use it more. But if you're going to be playing your marimba in the studio, if you have lots of space in your house, if you don't mind having a marimba that is really hard to move around, and you have the money, then buy a 5-octave marimba. And if you have even more money, buy both. I hope no one watching this video is able to buy both straight away, because Damn, that's a lot of money. I was actually quite shocked when I played this the first time. I was like, wow, Purdue sounds this good. Throughout my entire university degree, I had no instruments at all. I just used the university instruments, and then I bought this in my final year. But anyway, leave me a comment below telling me what marimbas you have, or if you have any suggestions for the show, or if you just want to say hi, you can leave a comment also. And please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for all the support. I know this video is a little bit strange because it's one of those cheap versus expensive things, but I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. And if you haven't already, please click that red subscribe button below to keep up with my uploads. We have just gone over 2,000 subscribers. Once again, thank you so much for that. That is crazy. That is crazy. And once again, if you want to get one of these hoodies, the Studio Family hoodie, you can get that in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I will see you next week for another episode of The Studio. Good night.